lot of technologies. Professionally, I've done a lot of things before Salesforce. So, .NET, PHP, Java, a lot of these things. But I've been focusing on Salesforce for the last 13 years. And I think I've got about 34 Salesforce certifications. Some of them may be retired now. But also I've gotten Slack admin and Slack developer certification. And I've been awarded MVP 7 times, live near San Francisco. And this wonderful photo is from Trailblazer DX that we just had.
We both are looking good on this one.
Yeah, great photo. I know you told me you had trouble recognizing me because I looked a little different from my profile photo. I think it's the pandemic. I put on weight. So,
We all did.
yeah. So the company I'm working for now, I've been here 3.5 years. It's called Robots and Pencils. And the reason I'm mentioning the company is because our company is really at the intersection of Salesforce and Slack. And it's really, I feel like, almost through luck or coincidence or something. So we were actually the first Slack partner before Slack even had a partner program.
That's nice.
And yeah, and our people created this thing we called it Missions AI, and it was a low code workflow builder for Slack. Slack actually acquired this, so our both our product became workflow builder, and some of our people went to Slack also. So like if you saw at the Trailblazer DX keynote, there was somebody presenting the Slack side of stuff. His name is Mike Brevoort. He actually used to work here. So there's actually a piece of Robots and Pencils that went through Slack, and then Salesforce acquired Slack. So we have some people working there, and our product is integrated in there as well. But we're also a Salesforce partner. So I'd say on the Slack side, we're kind of a big fish in a small pond. We're the original Slack people, partners and product developers and all this kind of stuff. By comparison, our Salesforce practice is newer. So we formalized that when I joined here in 2018. And so we're Salesforce SI partner. We've done a lot of projects. We're also about to be Salesforce ISV partner. And Salesforce Ventures has invested in us because of our Slack capabilities. So through this history of how we were part of Slack and then part of Salesforce, we're kind of like at this perfect moment in time now. We're at the intersection of Salesforce and Slack. So it's very exciting for our company. That's what I'm here to talk to you about is this intersection of Salesforce and Slack. And I know this is an architect group, so I want to focus more on the architecture side of this.
Doesn't have to be. Yeah, we have a group, actually mixed group here, so you can
mix. Okay. Sure. So I did do a pretty deep session on development at Apex Hours where I focus more on development. So I'll talk a little bit about development, but I think the architecture is very important. Like a lot of people are still wondering, like, where does Slack fit into all this? Why should I use Slack? Things like this. So, we hear a lot about these systems. They talk about systems of record, systems of intelligence, systems of engagement. So you can see like systems of record, CRM, right? This would be Salesforce, maybe HCM, maybe Workday. Systems of intelligence, this is Einstein. Systems of engagement, this is kind of where Slack fits in. Maybe folks remember Chatter. That was kind of a system of engagement built into the Salesforce system of record. It kind of works, but didn't really solve the problem the way Slack does. So Slack has really just emerged as this winner. You see like the advertisements, Salesforce #1 CRM. I think Slack is really the #1 system of engagement. So just keeping these concepts of, what these systems are for. Slack is not meant to replace a system of record. It's meant to augment multiple systems of record as a system of engagement. And I think that's also important. Some people think of Slack as just a communication tool, like, like an alternative to email, which it is, but it's also more than that. So engagement layer kind of captures, I think, the Slack value proposition pretty well.
Yeah,
But
and also on
yeah,
the
go ahead.
yeah, as I remember that there were many people were you were asking questions with Parker Harris about this with Chatter replacing Slack, and yeah,
Hmm.
I think that this is going to be the future. I mean, Slack is going to be the future, and for all the people who have joined us, I just want
For
to
sure.
encourage you all to if you haven't used Slack, you should try it out. You already have the grip. I'll share the URL at the end. Yeah, so go ahead, Daniel.
Yeah, definitely try it. But you have to get pretty deep in exploring it. So don't just try it at a surface level, but like play with everything. Yeah. So, this is talking about some of the unique things about Slack, right? How do you learn Slack? How do you wrap your brain around it? Obviously, play with it, but like, here's some of the concepts I wanted to convey just to kick this off. So, first of all, Slack doesn't have really this back-end database or application processing the way Salesforce does, or a lot of platforms do, right? So, we're used to platforms where you can query the database like SQL, or you can run some Apex code. Slack doesn't have that. So it's got the UI, the interface for Slack, which is great on web, desktop, mobile. It's got APIs. And then it's got the app directory where you can install apps. Those apps that you install, they don't actually like install to your Slack org the same way they would install to a Salesforce org. These apps actually live somewhere, most often like on AWS. So it's more like you're authenticating to the apps. Maybe they're creating you as a tenant in their database. Um, so that's the way the app directory works for Slack. So in some sense, it's not as robust, right? It does some things very well, but it wasn't built from the ground up to have like to create custom objects, custom fields, run custom code. It was built to call their API. So if you want to display some message, you have to push it to their API, that kind of thing. And it's organized with workspaces and channels. So it's got this 2-level hierarchy. I'll show that some more, but that's important because as we move into such busy times in our work life, like, how do we organize all this stuff? So I'll talk about workspaces and channels. And then surfaces and interactivity. So these are two very unique concepts to Slack, and I'll go into more detail, but understanding surfaces and interactivity in Slack helps you understand the building blocks that you can build with when you build things for Slack. So first of all, I want to talk about Slack as a replacement for email. I don't know if any of you are still using email. Like, I did a lot of business with email, and I look back on those emails now from, like, say 10 years ago, and it's almost comical, right? You're looping in all these people and you're replying back and forth and back and forth. If you reply on your mobile device, it looks one way. If you reply on your desktop, it looks another way. And so you have this super messy email thread, and you're like trying to read it all over the place from the top down and the bottom up. And it's like, it really did a horrible job of like collaborating over time and looping people in. So Slack is an amazing replacement for email. I would encourage everybody to just like stop using their email, just use Slack. I mentioned the messy piece. Also, the security of email is horrible. I mean, these phishing attempts with the pandemic really have gone through the roof. So, I see a question here: is Slack secure? Yes, it's very secure as compared to email. So, email, people can impersonate other people very easily. Email is wide open to the world. So, just this simple concept that Slack, the people in Slack are pre-vetted, right? So like, you can use Slack Connect to connect to other Slack orgs, but you both have to authorize it. So, I know we have these sort of open Slack communities that aren't really like strongly pre-vetted, but when you're in a company, You've got your company email domain, right? You're only going to have people at your email domain in there, employees of your company. If people outside your company want to talk to you at another company, you can authorize their Slack org with Slack Connect. So there's a lot more, closed nature of it, pre-vetted nature. And email becomes much more that top of the funnel. It's for leads that come in or people that want to sell you something. So you kind of treat your email not as your first line of communication, but more of your second line, your backup for the wide open world. And you view those emails with much more scrutiny. Is this person real or not? If something comes in through email asking you to log in, maybe treat that with some suspicion, and this is how companies can prevent a lot of these hacking attempts, these phishing attempts in the world that we live in now. So think of those simple benefits, right? Just the fact that you can't get phished on Slack is a huge win. You can trust it. But the other thing here I wanted to point out was this issue of email being too siloed. So the use case here is like you have all this great email dialogue with somebody and you're figuring out all these things. Well, let's say you both leave the company. I mean, that thread basically dies, right? So Slack, you have a choice. You can do private, public communications. If you do things in a public forum and you're going back and forth, it's a channel that other people can access. People can see that. They can also search it later. So, Slack actually stands for like searchable log of all content and knowledge. So that piece is huge. That's something email can't do. You can't go search everybody's email boxes. Email is by default private, and it's got kind of that limited lifespan. When the person leaves your company, the email's gone. So yeah, user-friendly than Basecamp. I think so. I think Slack is one of the most user-friendly, sticky tools. And that's how it actually grew much faster than Salesforce. It had a similar story where people would purchase it without going through IT or something, and it would just grow, but it grew much faster. So the user experience is so good, it just sucks you in, and the adoption grew like crazy. So they did a really good job. I'm not going to say it's perfect. I'm not going to say there's not a lot of room for improvement, but it's definitely the best tool out there for this kind of thing, in my opinion. But it's not just a replacement for email. I mean, the other value proposition it has, it's a replacement for operating in many systems at once. Email doesn't really have as much of a concept of integrating with applications, right? Like you can do some of that, but email is mostly just a communication tool. Well, Slack, through the app directory, building custom apps using Slack Workflow Builder, you can automate these quick work tasks. So you're in Slack, you're talking to people, but you're also getting work done that's the system of record is in another system. So, like people's brains have trouble doing a lot of quick work tasks and deep work tasks at the same time, right? You'll get kind of distracted and you can't focus. So what Slack does is you can set it all up so all those quick work tasks can be done in a very frictionless way through Slack, allowing you to focus on your deep work. So you're not having to juggle dozens of systems at the same time. So it's kind of a first stop shop. I know another way I've talked about is like a universal remote control. It's like this one place. You can't do everything there, but you can do all the easy stuff. You can do all the communications. You can do the things like approving something, requesting something, thumbs up, thumbs down, these types of things. And at the end of the day, you'll just be a lot less fatigued, and you'll have gotten a lot more work done because Slack is handling all that wiring and all that switching for you. So you just stay in the one context. I see question here. Can we integrate Slack with Marketing Cloud? The answer is yes. There's actually out-of-the-box things that Salesforce is coming up with for all of their clouds over time for Slack, but you can also build custom integrations too. So I think a common one is like monitoring the status of a campaign. When marketers send out an email blast or they're running some email journey, like that's the exciting part. Is it working? And so you can push those statuses into Slack, like, engagements and things like that, opens, clicks, all that stuff to see how effective your marketing is doing. Okay, so that's what I want to see. So think of it as it's kind of a replacement for email and all these quick work tasks in one. So it's this communication and integrated app platform. So that's really the value proposition. So this concept that's very Slack focused is organizing things into workspaces and channels. A lot of companies just have one workspace. So if you're like in a community, like a Salesforce community in Slack, you'll probably just like this workspace is all you're operating under, right? Like this may be your company, this may be one community group, this may be another community group. But Slack has introduced this concept of enterprise grid, where you can actually have multiple workspaces, which are all part of the same company. And then the channel concept is the second level of the hierarchy. So workspace is top level, and then channel. And this is kind of what enterprise grid would look like. So each one of these is kind of a department within a company, right? So this is now a company that's using multiple workspaces because they're too big to have one workspace with thousands of channels. So company has a workspace, sales, engineering, support, so forth. They all have their own workspace, but they're not totally siloed. So there's some siloing and some shared nature, right? So like sales has the accounts channel. Well, engineering doesn't probably care about looking at all the sales accounts channel. IT doesn't care about looking. So this is more of a sales workspace specific channel. But everybody wants to see the company-wide announcements. So this channel is shared amongst all the workspaces. So you can kind of hit this sweet spot of isolating the information so you're not getting information overload. You're not seeing everything happening in the company unless you want to switch to that workspace. But then the things that you do need to see that come from, like, a common one is engineering and support, right? They need to see each other's shared channel because support's handling it and engineering's fixing it, things like this. So that's workspaces and channels in Slack. The concept of surfaces is this is another unique thing to Slack. So the three main surfaces, pretty much the only ones you have, are the Home tab, also called App Home, Modals, and Messages. So App Home looks like this. It gives you this Home tab specific to your app. So you can create as many Slack apps as you want. You can install Slack apps from the app directory. Each app will have a Home tab. So this Home tab is a surface, which is sort of a way to present information to a user. And it's really interesting the way this works. Probably think of this from a Salesforce perspective, like where you create like a Lightning Web component and it displays something, or like an app builder page and it displays something. The way the Home tab works, App Home in Slack, when you visit this page, it generates it for you on the fly. So remember I talked about how Slack doesn't really have like application hosting, its APIs. So when you visit the App Home, it's going to fire an event that says, hey, somebody's viewing App Home. Your app sitting wherever on AWS, for example, has to then handle that event and generate the page on the fly and send it back to Slack so you can actually see this page. The cool thing about that is by nature, it's very dynamic. So every user can see a page custom to them that's generated outside of Slack and then pumped into Slack. So you can do some really cool stuff with App Home. This is like your canvas, your surface here to make any type of UI you want within the constraints of Slack's UI elements. So Salesforce has Lightning Design System. Slack has Block Kit, and Block Kit is simpler than Lightning Design. So it's got, you can put images in there, you can put dividers, form fields, buttons, but like it's not going to have like a super robust data grid like Lightning has one, or like a hierarchy grid or something. It's a simpler. The great thing about being simpler is you almost don't even have to test it on mobile versus desktop. That simple Block Kit UI works great on mobile and desktop, so that's the benefit. Sorry there, I didn't mean to jump forward. So your surfaces, this home tab. You also get modals, which are pretty much usually only you'll see Block Kit used for those. So Block Kit for App Home, Block Kit for modals. You can't fire a modal whenever you want. You can only open a modal like when a user requests it. So that's one limitation of a modal. Like a user has to click on a button or do something explicit to get a modal to open. Whereas a message, you can display these whenever you want. So you can push messages to channels and users without needing the express permission of a modal. But messages, you might see, they might be plain text or Block Kit. So home tab, modals, messages, these are all surfaces. You'll typically see Block Kit only on home and modal. You'll see Block Kit or plain text in a message. So you can inject nice little forms right into a message in line. It doesn't have to just be plain text. So these are your three surfaces, your three ways to kind of interface with people in Slack. So interactivity is, you might think of it a bit of the reverse. So whereas surfaces are kind of Slack presenting things to the users, interactivity are ways that the Slack users can interact back with Slack. Also, machines can use this, use interactivity. So essentially, interactivity is machines or humans that are, and if it's a machine, it's going to be something like a scheduled job or an API push, real time. If it's a person, they're going to be using something like a shortcut, / command, or a Block Kit button click. So / commands are a little bit more power user style, right? They kind of remind us of like using terminal or something like that. So you hit /, you hit a command. It gives you a little help text here of like what you can put in your command. So these are really handy for, I've seen used a lot for app directory apps. You might say something like /Zoom and it just launches a Zoom meeting, super handy right from Slack. You don't have to go find, where's my Zoom app? How do I start a meeting? So like just being able to hit /Zoom from Slack and talk to somebody is like, removes so much friction from my day. And then we have these shortcuts, right? So we have global shortcuts and we have message shortcuts. So the idea of a global shortcut is you can launch it from anywhere and it doesn't really care what channel it's in. So, you might click this little plus button and this pops up and you can see all your global shortcuts. Create an event in the events app, find client metrics. These things don't care about what channel you're in, whereas they don't care about what channel or what message. Whereas these message level events are in the context of a message. So Sarah says that's a really good point. You click these 3 dots and you can create all these custom message shortcuts here, like create an event, view client metrics file bug, but it will suck in this text as part of these events. So that's kind of, these are like the 3 main interactivity methods that you get to build an app in Slack: a / command, a global, or a message shortcut. And this is just a picture of depicting these flows. So this could be a machine doing an interaction or a person doing an interaction, and then surfaces are presenting something back. So interactions and surfaces are key to building Slack experiences.
Kind of look like a person. I mean, look like you pre-COVID actually.
Yeah, yeah. It's even this person sitting like I do.
Yeah, that's what I recognized.
I see a question here. Ali says, "What are Slack tools?" Is the question like, what tools do you use to develop a Slack app? Is that the question? Maybe just give some more detail in the chat there, and I'll try to answer that one. So Slack has a lot of different APIs. I don't even think this is all of them, but with Salesforce, we're familiar. They have different APIs too, right? They have REST and SOAP and bulk and streaming and these different APIs. So Slack has different APIs also. These RTM and socket mode APIs are pretty interesting. They're a little bit old school, but like WebSocket is an alternative to Bayou. So like Comet D, right? So Salesforce streaming is Comet D. Slack streaming is WebSocket, so not compatible there. But what these are really good for is interfacing with on-premise servers without having to put a hole in the firewall. So you can have an on-premise server subscribing to Slack events, and it's going, it's basically like checking out, it's going outbound to your firewalls to check Slack, so you don't have to make a hole in your firewall. So these are kind of interesting and useful for those use cases. They have webhooks, which is a really simple way to do something like just turn on a webhook and you can put a message into Slack, like with something as simple as a outbound URL call from Salesforce. But then, they're more full-blown developer stuff that's really in-depth and robust, or Events API and Web API. So the Slack Web API is basically like your Salesforce REST API. You kind of do everything with that pretty much. But that's only for like calling into Slack, For Slack doing outbound, it's got this Events API. So you can subscribe to anything with this Events API. Like, you're typing a message in Slack, you're joining a channel, you're deleting something, you're adding an emoji, you're creating a private channel. Like any event that happens in Slack, you can subscribe to firing an event from Slack and handle that in your app. So this is super powerful. So the combination of the Event API and the Web API, you can pretty much do anything you can imagine. Like, you can attach a file, fire an event, you can listen for that file somewhere else and look at the contents of that file, in Heroku or AWS, and respond based on the contents, or delete the file if it has something in it it's not supposed to have. You can really use the combination of the two. And Slack events, I think they're a little bit like interactivity, in the sense that interactivity is something like a user, but I think of interactivity as more of an active thing that a user is doing. So events are passive. So like maybe for interactivity, you might say, Slack, I want you to do this thing for me. But with an event, you might do something like you might type a message and Slack might then suggest something. Hey, did you want to do this? And you never even bothered to say you wanted to do it. So it's kind of a passive way to interact with Slack. It can even be a little bit creepy, right? Because it's like Slack's always listening to you, but used properly, it's very effective. So I'm going to go over like a lot of architectures now. This is a really interesting space, and it's changing rapidly. So new things are being developed by Salesforce, by Slack, and so forth. So this is the first architecture I want to propose. This is, Slack doesn't have the database, the application hosting. So what we have here is we have Slack, we have Salesforce. Salesforce has some Apex code. You can do something like the event API or a slash command from Slack, and you can actually tell Slack when these things happen, call a Salesforce endpoint, and this would be like a custom. You create a webhook in Salesforce, so you create a site, and the site has Apex REST, and you can look for these calls from Slack there and handle them with Apex code. You can query Salesforce databases if you need to. And then you respond with the Slack web API. So this is an architecture that I've done, works really good. I did a presentation on it, Apex Hours. It's great if the whole point of your Slack app is to access Salesforce data and do things in Salesforce. The one downside is Apex can't do everything, right? You hit governor limits, or if you want to do really fancy things like bring in libraries, you can't exactly do it. But you could extend this. You could use like Salesforce functions over here as an option. So this is an architecture that's usable right now for a lot of things. So this is kind of the future of using Salesforce as the platform. So Salesforce is coming out. You maybe heard about it, Foyer. They're calling it now the Apex SDK. And there's also this companion piece called UISF, UI Services Framework. And so Apex SDK is about when Slack calls you with an event or you respond to Slack, instead of having to have, a site with a webhook and HTTP callouts, all that Apex wiring, you get like native Apex events in Salesforce. So it's the same concept as the previous. It's just much easier. Slack feels more native to Apex. You say like Slack dot something instead of like a big old HTTP request class. And then UISF is just a way to build those BlockKit UIs from Apex, because BlockKit Builder is kind of JSON based, and so UISF gives you a shortcut, easier way to build those UIs that you inject back into Slack. Let's see. So if businesses are using Microsoft Teams, why should they choose Slack? Okay, what features Slack provides Google Chat? So this is a great question. This comes up a lot. And Teams is, obviously the biggest competitor to Slack out there. Teams, I think, has a lot of legacy back-end stuff. They've tried to put like the Teams front end on it, but this legacy stuff in the back end still kind of rears its ugly head sometimes. Like, could be bugs, performance issues, things like that. So there's very subtle differences, but using Slack versus Teams, using Slack just feels a lot nicer. I generally, when I use Teams, especially on a Mac, I kind of have bad experience. So as chat tools, I think they're pretty comparable. They both get the job done, but the user experience of Slack is better. But as platforms, I think Slack is way ahead. The APIs are better, more approachable. And I think they've hit the sweet spot of, they're still secure, right? They're still enterprise grade, but they're not like over the top enterprise the way Teams is. Like, they also integrate with Microsoft pretty well, like Active Directory and things like that. So you can use them, but I know it's a tough sell, because if you're a Microsoft shop, you're going to be kind of wall to wall Microsoft, So, and I'm not talking about this too much in this presentation, but I'll be doing another presentation next week where I talk about this. There is sometimes a use case where, okay, this company is going to use Teams. There's no way to change that, but you can actually integrate like on a channel level, synchronize a Slack channel. So it's almost like when you have Slack Connect with two Slack orgs, you can also kind of make a custom version of a Slack Connect between a Slack workspace or Slack channel and a Teams channel. So, if you can't win that battle, you can at least integrate with it and have the two systems of engagement synchronized. So I would say if they're already using Teams and they like it, you're probably not going to get them to switch. You just have to accept that. And it's a lot of it's pricing. They almost give it away. So, what features Slack provides Microsoft Teams and Google Chat is lacking? I think Slack has been doing a great job of, they've been introducing video stuff, huddles, a lot of different things. So I think a lot of these platforms are achieving parity. It's not so much about who has what feature, it's about who has done it with a better user experience, and better developer tools to extend it, that kind of stuff. Okay, so this is an interesting thing we just saw mostly at Trailblazer DX, right? So it's still Salesforce and Slack, but low code style, right? So we're not seeing Apex over here, we're seeing flows. So you can do things like inject a form into Slack and capture those values back into Salesforce, or based on some rules, you could archive a channel. So we're starting to see these front end and back end things you can build in Salesforce that are integrated with Slack without having to write code. Obviously, it's very limited to start, but I think as you're looking at these architectures, these are not mutually exclusive. You can build as many Slack apps as you want. Any one of these apps can implement any one of these architectures. So I would recommend that companies layer, like maybe they use this method for their Salesforce apps and they use another architecture that we'll see later for their non-Salesforce apps. Then you don't have bottlenecks, right? Your Salesforce people build out your Salesforce apps for Slack. Your full stack web people build out your Workday apps for Slack, and you use them both. So this is an architecture that you'll see most commonly done today. You get the full power of AWS. This is hosting like your database, with custom tables, custom fields. You can do any application code you want, you're basically using the Slack web API to talk to Slack, or Slack is talking to you via like events or / command, something like that. And so you sit in the middle here. You have no governor limits. Run any library you want. Like if you download a Slack from the app directory, it's probably hosted this way. And then it can talk to Salesforce if it needs to. It can talk to Workday if it needs to, and then talk back to Slack. And this is an even easier way. Well, I don't know if it's easier. If you're in the Salesforce world, it's an even easier way, right? Heroku is like kind of like AWS on training wheels, So, and it doesn't have to just be AWS or Heroku. This could be an on-premise server. This could be, Azure, anything you want. But AWS and Heroku are pretty common. This is a way that Salesforce will tell you to use right now a lot. Like if you look at their developer blogs. But then there's an even easier flavor. So AWS or Heroku using the APIs, or you can use the Bolt SDK. So if you're doing it in Node.js, Java, or Python, Bolt SDK, similar to the Apex SDK, Foyer, Bolt just makes it a lot easier, say from JavaScript to talk to Slack. It does a lot of the wiring for you, and fires an event that you can handle in JavaScript without having to set up all that plumbing. So you can, those bolts are available for these languages. So you can run those languages on any platform. that'll support them. So AWS or Heroku. And this is another interesting architecture. So workflow builder, I talked about how, you know, robots and pencils create a workflow builder. Slack acquired it. So workflow builder is the low code tool on the Slack side. We saw flow on the Salesforce side. Workflow builder can actually, if you use Node.js, workflow builder, kind of like when you do a flow in Salesforce and use invocable Apex and you can talk to code. So workflow builder can talk to like your AWS. So you can essentially create little building blocks on AWS and assemble them with workflow builder on the Slack side. And through the Bolt SDK, this only is for Node.js, right? You can't use Java or Python in that case, but you can combine the low code with a pro code solution on the Slack side using workflow builder. That's another architecture. And then Slack announced their future generation platform. So you remember earlier I said Slack doesn't have a database, doesn't have application code. Well, with their future generation platform, they will. So I can only imagine in the future this will be the way people build Slack apps, especially if Salesforce isn't part of the picture. Like if you just want to build a Slack app that talks to Workday, for example, this seems like it'll be the way to go. So they give you the ability to host functions natively in Slack. Has to be TypeScript. So if you don't like TypeScript, you might not want to use this. But TypeScript is pretty friendly. Like if you know Apex and you know JavaScript, you'll like TypeScript. It's sort of a combination of the two. And they are creating a database that has Slack data types. So for instance, there's like a user type, strongly typed. So, it's a tailor-made database for working with Slack. So you can do custom fields and so forth, just like you can in Salesforce, but they'll also have the more specific, strongly typed Slack objects and relationships. So right now this is in beta. When this is announced, this will be a great option. So again, all these different architectures are all valid. Some are usable right now. Some are a little bit forward looking, but you don't have to pick just one. You can create within a company, you can use like all of these or a subset of these, maybe, and that's the beauty of Slack, right? So when you talk about like building the business operating system 2.0, you can leverage all these architectures. Like if you have different departments, like your IT department can build with one architecture. Maybe your sales, you kind of have shadow IT where your Salesforce was purchased by the sales department. They can actually create their own app within Salesforce. And Slack is kind of this front end that's accessing all the apps with all the architectures. So just think about the best architecture for the task at hand. It doesn't have to be just one. So this vision of the business operating system 2.0, right? Chatter was kind of had that vision. I don't know if you remember all the dream forces from 10 years ago. They were talking about like business is social and all this kind of stuff, but maybe the world wasn't ready for it then, or maybe the product just wasn't right. But for whatever reason, Chatter didn't exactly work out as well as Slack has. So, since Chatter, the world's really changed. We've seen this pandemic, and pandemics cause people, to be a little more isolated. We're more used to working remote now. We're more used to buying things online. We don't necessarily need to do like a lot of these inefficient things we used to do. We don't really, but people hung on to them while COVID sort of forced them to let go of them. So speed is so important now. Just every year things get faster. If you've been in IT, you've just seen it happen year after year. We have to do more with less and this kind of stuff. So this business operating system 2.0, or what they call like a Slack first digital HQ. It's about having one person getting the work done of, whatever, 10% more work every year or something. So like, how can you make all of these business processes a lot quicker, that kind of stuff. And I think this work from anywhere, work from mobile, we used to go to an office and that was our, that was our concept of what it meant to go to work. But even if your office is physical, you have these different buildings that you go to. They've sort of disconnected from the company identity. So, you kind of have this office that's a virtual concept, like in your head, right? And I don't know if it's good or bad, but like I walk around all the time and I like have this virtual office in my head where I'm like, seeing my coworkers kind of mashed up together. Maybe it's like what I'm used to seeing in Zoom or something like that. But it's more about, you can do the work wherever you want. You can go take a walk on your phone and participate in a meeting. You can work from home. You can go to the office even, but when you're at the office, maybe a lot of the people you're working with are somewhere else at home. So these offices are still there, but they're not the identity of the company anymore. So to build the equivalent of the physical office, Slack is a key tool there. So how do your people socialize? How do they know what's going on in the company? How do you feel connected to everything? How do you hear that? Because that was the beauty of an office, is like you would hear things that weren't always part of your like direct job. And that's kind of where the magic would happen. You'd be around the water cooler or something, and you would innovate because you would cross these two different ideas. So Slack can actually recreate that for the new virtual. And it's not just about how you set up your channels. It's also about how you set up your apps. You can have apps that will connect to people for a virtual coffee or things like this. So there's a ton of possibilities for recreating this business operating system for a new virtual world. All right, so that's all I had for slides. I've been answering the questions as I go. Any other questions? Is it possible for people to unmute and ask questions?
Yeah, sure. Feel
Okay.
free to let me know if you have any questions, and I can give you the presenter option to turn it on. By the way, Daniel, it was amazing. I mean, the overall in-depth information that you're giving for Slack, that I believe that will definitely for sure will help the current audience, and also, and this video will be available on YouTube, so it will be available for others as well. So thank you so much.
Cool. Yeah, I know it's kind of a mysterious topic for some people. We use Slack a lot, so this stuff's very second nature to us, but not everybody's using Slack. And I know there's a lot of people like, why the heck should I use it? What is it? So that's what I'm trying to address here. And then also, okay, well, we're going to use it. Well, how do we use it? What are these different considerations of how we architect our systems and set them up and stuff?
I completely agree. All right, so I believe everyone is good. They do not have any questions. It's too good. By the way, just wanted to say two words for the Daniel. Actually, a little story about how I met him. So I knew Daniel from the Twitter, and from all the activities that he does, and also I knew him about his latest venture for actually it's a low code competition, right? It's something like that. And
Yeah, it's
and
called Legends of Low
yeah,
Code.
Legends of Low Code. Yeah, that's right. I'm so sorry for that.
Yeah.
So I got to know about it, and I'm okay. I'm gonna meet him. So I realized that he's also coming to the trail Laser DX, and I was like, okay. Actually, I made a couple of list of people who I wanted to meet, and Daniel was one of them. On the first day, I saw him, but he was quite busy, so I just said, okay, I'm just gonna go and meet him afterwards. when from the appearance, actually, I was not able to recognize him that he's the same person I used to know. And then and remember I saw some of your poster on the Field Blazer DX somewhere, I don't know where, but I saw that some poster and then recognized, okay, you are, and you're the same person that I was looking for. And but actually, to be honest, don't go with the looks of Daniel. He is the nicest person I've ever met in my whole life. To be honest, seriously. But if you look at his face, you may feel like, okay, no, you should not be messing up with this person. But I mean, he is the person. I know that when I came to him, he was like super soft and wanted to just explore more and wanted to talk more about the things, right? And I didn't know. Yeah, yeah, this picture. See, so I saw this
This is how
picture.
you
Yeah,
said this guy is actually this guy.
exactly. This is the poster. Thanks for bringing it up. So
Yeah.
when I saw this picture, I realized, okay, this is the same person. So, but to be honest, Daniel is the nicest person and so humble. And I remember we walked through. I mean, through the exit gate together for the party. I'm sorry, I was not able to meet there. I had to leave for the flight for the Northeast Rim. But yeah, I missed that. But to be honest, I'm sure if you have any questions in the future regarding Slack or whatever, I'm pretty sure that Daniel will love to answer you. You can feel free to reach out. I mean, you should follow him on the Twitter. He actually shared a couple of good stuff, and also you can feel free to reach out to him for any of the stuff. So and
Yeah, happy to answer any specifics. And I thank you for saying that, but I actually feel like most people in the Salesforce ecosystem are like that. So it has a culture of everybody being more humble and helpful and this kind of stuff. So you'll find that in lots of places. It's not just me. So
I can't agree more
yeah, I
on
think
this. Because if you ask me, I'm sorry, if you ask me one good thing about the Salesforce ecosystem, I would say that everyone, everywhere is available to help you out. You just have to express what you want, what are you lacking of, how you need the other person can help you, and there you go. You will find millions of people coming together to help you out. This is the beauty of Salesforce, and this is actually I believe the success of Salesforce is the community.
yeah, it is. Other ecosystems might be a little more competitive, but Salesforce, I think there's enough abundance to go around where people are helping pull each other up. Uh, there's like the rising tide lifts all boats mentality versus more of a scarcity mentality. So it's that's why I've been uh, in the ecosystem for 13 years now. Because that community aspect, the helping aspect, it's pretty appealing to me.
Yes, I'm very glad to be virtually sitting with you in the room and we're talking about this. To be honest, I'm very glad, and I'm looking forward to meet you. By the way, I'm just before going to that, I just want to know uh, what what do you believe is that next things coming up? I mean, what's next for you? I mean, you've been into Salesforce ecosystem for like 13 years. So, what excites you more?
Yeah, I'm
I
in
know
a
it's an
long
interesting one.
journey. Yeah, I'm in a long journey of uh, changing from kind of an individual contributor to more of a leadership role. So, I've been doing coding of some sort my whole life. So, 40 years or 37 years or something. So, I've actually been, when I started my Salesforce career, I was even like, man, I've been writing code for too long. So, that next journey for me is more around leadership and empowering other people to that are passionate about learning to code and sharing my lessons learned and helping them. So as a practice lead, I'm getting to do that, my current role, but it's a very slow transition. So this is probably like a 10-year transition for me. It's not something because I still like to do coding. So uh, it happens very slowly. Every year I do a little bit less coding and a little more leadership. So
I know it sounds
Did
a
that
bit
answer
hard.
your question? Was that?
Yeah, actually, kind of you did.
Yeah,
But actually, it's bringing up more question on mine. I'm just gonna keep it short.
sure.
I know it's already, this is a morning time for you, and I'm sure you have already grabbed a cup of coffee for yourself. I don't know. Um,
Yeah.
you're looking. Oh, you did okay. That's just better.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had some strong coffee already.
I know. I cannot really. I mean, express how happy I am. I really appreciate your your dedication and the way that you wanted to share your knowledge with others. That's too good. By the way, the question that came up in my mind that all right. So I mean, I'm also a developer, and I know all developers. Once you are a developer, you cannot be a person who doesn't write code. I know. But at this point, actually, when you are going away from the code, it's my actually fear that you may stop learning what you have already done. Or maybe you will not learn what the next new things are coming, because Salesforce is coming up with all those new features in every release, and you have to cope up with everything that Salesforce is coming at. I mean, you should know. So I mean, I don't know if you are doing this at this role, but how do you imagine that in your future roles?
Yeah, there's only so much surface area, or you can think of it. They talk about when they talk about architects, they talk about breadth and depth, right? And you can only have a finite number of those things. Your brain can only hold so much. So, like, let's say you can hold 10 squares worth of surface area. So you could go like one wide and 10 deep, or you could go 10 wide and one deep. But you can't really do 10 wide and 10 deep. I mean, you can try to get more breadth and more depth, but at some point it's just you can't do it. So you kind of have to choose, pick your battles. And so, yeah, I'm probably losing some depth in some areas as I'm gaining breadth, as I'm trying to work with clients, work with employees more than write code. And so then it's about um, leveraging the depth of multiple people. So you don't yourself have all the breadth and depth, but your team does. So maybe you have 10 people and they each have 1 square of breadth and 10 squares of depth. And so that's how you get your 10 wide and 10 deep, is through the collective intelligence of your whole team, kind of a thing. So don't try to have it all. You'll like I have 30 something certifications, but if you were to sit me down and take all 34 right now, I wouldn't pass them all. It's been some breadth and some depth over years that I've achieved that, but not all at once. So,
Makes sense. I cannot
yeah.
agree more to this. That's actually that matches what I believe, and that's what my goal is. So yeah, you have to let go some of it to learn something new. This makes
Yeah. Yeah.
um
Yeah. So don't drive yourself crazy
yeah, yeah.
uh, trying to achieve it all, uh, but definitely never stop learning. And this knowledge is going to rotate through, right? Like all the stuff that you learned about Visual Force is now not as relevant, So
For sure.
let go of some of the old stuff and learn the new stuff. And that's fine.
Um, but by the way, for to the audience, so if you want to take this opportunity and talk to Daniel, just let me know. I'll give you the present role. You can turn on your camera and mic and talk to him. By the way, just last parting thoughts. Any three key takeaways for the audience? I mean, it's just gonna be the summary of your whole Salesforce ecosystem, what you have learned, what you wanted to give something to the audience.
So not just Slack, but just anything.
Yeah, anything.
Yeah. Yeah. So the number one I would say is kind of I don't know the best way to phrase it, but it's like uh, don't be scared to take initiative, kind of thing. Like um, like a good example of that for me was starting a developer group in the North Bay, and then taking over the developer group in San Francisco. That brought me so many great opportunities. If I didn't take the initiative to do that, this never would have happened. So if anybody's wanting to do something, whether it's do a call for speakers at a conference, or step up at work and like raise their hand to do a new project, something like this. Like if you think you might want to do it a little bit, then do it. Don't just worry and then pull back and then regret. So it looks like maybe you froze. Did you guys lose me? Did you catch all that?
No, I missed the last one. Sorry.
Yeah. So I don't know if other folks lost it, but yeah. So anytime you see this opportunity that's interesting to you, don't hesitate to jump on it, because you actually, more often than not, that will be what progresses you in your career, and you'll look back and you'll be, man, I'm so happy I did that. So and the Salesforce ecosystem is the perfect place to do that. You'll be rewarded for those kinds of things. So whether it's part of your job or out in the community, jump on those opportunities, or sometimes even you create the opportunities for yourself. You come up with something totally new. There's so many opportunities for that now. With all these things, YouTube and TikTok, and there's whatever the next one is. So yeah, there's that's my top takeaway. I would say also look for ways to bring other things from outside of Salesforce into Salesforce. So some of the coolest stuff I've seen are like Java developers or .NET developers taking some concept. Like if you look at books like Andy Fawcett's Enterprise Patterns for Salesforce, this kind of came from the Java world. There's a lot of opportunity right now with Lightning Web Components in the JavaScript world. So any either experience you might have from other roles that you've had, or if you're purely in the Salesforce world and that's it, look outside of it. Look to the open source world. Go look at all the NPM packages and start applying those to Salesforce functions and Lightning Web Components. And this is how you can create amazing innovation without you're not really doing it from scratch, right? You're bringing something from another world to Salesforce, which is almost like from scratch. People will think you did it from scratch. It's got as much value as from scratch, but really it's not that hard. It just requires some brainstorming and some experimenting, and you can create all these new amazing things nobody's ever seen before in Salesforce. So I'd say, do that as much as you can, and you'll also be rewarded for that. It's cross technology discipline innovation like that, those types of things. What else? I guess the last one would be it's similar to the first, but it's more specific. So the first one I said, if you're on the fence about some opportunity, take it. But I would say more specifically, it's kind of along the lines of build your personal branding. Like, make sure you've got a Twitter account. Make sure your photo is on there. Maybe if secondary, yeah, LinkedIn. If it's Facebook, whatever. But this is how, like, stuff is so competitive now, and there's so many people out there. It's table stakes to have like a good online presence. Put some thought leadership out there. Brand your social media to the way you differentiate yourself. Like if you're more of a front end, or more of a Tableau person, or whatever it is, put that out there. And this, if you're not doing this, you're kind of behind the curve. So I would do it like as soon as possible, and don't worry so much. Don't be embarrassed. Don't have the hesitation.
That's all of them are very, and I think great suggestions and feedback to actually that's really surprised that that's best way. Did you already thought all of this before coming into this call, or you just
No, this is on thinking on my feet.
you did
But
well?
this is 13 years in the making. So
You should write it somewhere and post it on it. Maybe tweet them because these are the wonderful feedback that you have given to many of them. So I'm sure this is gonna help for others as well. Well, that was
yeah,
uh yeah, sure. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I've been to India before, so hopefully Pakistan is next on the bucket list.
I was about to
I
say
haven't
that.
been
Yeah. So
traveling much. Yeah, I haven't been traveling much because of COVID mostly, but we'll get back to it. People will normalize traveling again soon. So
yeah, I'm not sure about the current flight rates. I know it's skyrocketing, but probably I mean you're not going the Pakistan remain in person this year. This year we're going to the virtual, but the next one, I'm pretty sure I'll be happy to see you here in Pakistan. So in
yeah, I'm
2023
very
we'll have.
curious to see what does the developer community look like in Pakistan. Is it
Oh,
similar to
you'll
India,
love
or
it.
how is it different and that kind of thing?
You will love the
Yeah,
talent that we have. That you'll mesmerize. I mean, it's just amazing. So yeah, you'll love to see that.
that's
All right.
awesome.
Actually, so I know it's also pretty late for all the folks from Pakistan. I'm just gonna do a quick raffle for the free certification vouchers giveaway, and yeah, then I mean, if you want to enjoy the fun, you can stick to us with us, or if you want to go and grab another cup of coffee for yourself, you can just go. It's up to you. All right.
Okay, well, I think I'll head off, but I'll leave you also with this link in chat. So this is a link to um, it's Slack for Salesforce, but it's a developer perspective. So today was more of an architect, but if you want to dive in and see what the code looks like, you can watch that YouTube video also.
Great. That would be helpful. Oh,
Awesome. Well, good luck. I hope the winner is happy with the raffle.
for sure. Let's see who's gonna be the winner. Thank you so much. I cannot thank you, Daniel, enough.
Thank you.
Sure,
Appreciate
we'll
it.
meet at Dreamforce. I'm planning for that. Are
Okay,
you?
I'll be there too.
Okay, great. So see you there.
It's my 10-year wedding anniversary, but I moved our wedding anniversary for Dreamforce. So.
Actually, this is a good time. I mean, this is the first time Salesforce did announce this Dreamforce stage earlier. Otherwise, because all of this happened in the
Yeah,
Trailblazer DX, all these conflicts. But it is good for you. You're
exactly.
able to move that out. Otherwise, at the wedding day,
I
you will be
moved it.
attending both of
Yeah,
them.
yeah. We'll make it happen. I'll see you there, and maybe we'll have more time. You won't be shooting
Yeah,
off
for
to
sure.
Northeast streaming. Yeah.
Well, I'll be coming in
Okay.
with a couple of stuff for you as well as a gift. Yeah, and we'll meet and we'll have a lunch, breakfast, or dinner together. Spend more time because there's a lot more to learn from you.
For sure. Likewise. We're all learning from each other.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Daniel, for
All
this
right.
wonderful
Thank
session this
you.
morning. Have a nice rest of your
Thanks for
weekend.
having me. Okay.
Bye.
Okay. Bye bye.
All right, everyone. I'm gonna go and run the raffle quickly. Let me just stop the recording here.